Hi, Nikki Gabriel from nikkigabriel.com. I'm an emotional well-being, empowerment, and mindset coach for midlife women who want to find more freedom, joy, and fulfillment in life. And today, I was hoping to be outside, but it's a little bit hot and really noisy, so I've decided to come in. I want to talk about limiting beliefs. And what do I mean by that? I mean those stories, thoughts, beliefs we have about ourselves that limit us in our potential. So they hold us back from things that we'd really love to be doing. They keep us stuck and playing small. And most of us have them. Things like imposter syndrome, perfectionism is often a sign that we've got some limiting beliefs somewhere. You may hear it talked about something like negative self-talk. That was always, when I was growing up and doing my psychology undergrad, negative self-talk was the thing. So it's all those times when we tell ourselves we're not good enough, we're not thin enough, tall enough, young enough, clever enough, organized enough, or we might talk about ourselves as too disorganized, too old. So all of those times when we're putting those limitations on ourselves and putting ourselves in a box and telling ourselves that we can't do or can't have or can't be something that we'd really truly desire to do, have, or be, that is a limiting belief. And I've been sort of grappling with one of my old ones over the past couple of weeks, which got triggered by something. And at the same time, I also got thinking about how limiting beliefs are very like ticks. You know, those horrible parasitic things that bury into your skin and then suck blood. Because after the woods last week, did the video last week in the woods, I got home and actually realised I got a tick on my neck. And as my limiting beliefs were kind of coming full flurry the following week, it got me thinking that actually we need to treat our limiting beliefs a bit like a parasite, because that's how they kind of are with us. So we need to learn to recognize them. We need to learn how to get rid of them. And to do that, we need the right tools. So, you know, any of you who've had ticks, know the easiest way to get rid of them is using a tick remover, which is like a little, it's not even a tweezer, it's like a 2-prong hook thing that you just squeeze it with and then it pops out. And that's kind of what we need to do with our limiting beliefs, because often they're so buried deep. So I thought it'd be useful to just share, first of all, why I think they're a bit like ticks, and then also 3 of the things that I do to help me kind of dig in and understand it and help shift limiting beliefs as they pop up for me. So the reason that I think limiting beliefs are a lot like ticks is that they often land, or usually land, uninvited. So you don't call them in, they just arrive without you realizing it often. And they start small and then they get bigger and bigger and bigger the longer they're left. And if they're not dealt with, they not only get bigger, but they can also lead to other sorts of complications. So if you don't know about ticks, particularly deer ticks, they can be, they're not normally life-threatening, I have to say, but you can get something called Lyme's disease from them, which is quite nasty. So if you do ever get a tick, you do need to look out for the bullseye rash that can come after you've been bitten. But anyway, the deeper they get, the harder they can be to remove, and they can lead to all sorts of knock-on things, like I've just said. So having the right tools at your disposal to learn to recognize them and learn to reframe, and in the case of limiting beliefs, or pull it off in the case of a tick. And the biggest thing really is, like ticks, limiting beliefs are of no real personal benefit to you. They take from you, but they really don't give you much back. I'll caveat that because actually they can be very juicy gold, but only when you start digging. So unless you kind of really get into it. So those are the main reasons why I think limiting beliefs are very like ticks, and we need to treat them in the same way, that they're parasitic. They don't do us any good. So the sooner we can recognize and get rid of them, the better. So how do I do it? Well, the first thing I usually do if I've is learn to notice, actually, so there's 4 things, bonus one, is learning to notice when you're doing it. So anytime that you're feeling kind of resistant to something, ask yourself why that is. And often it's because you're feeling to something or not good enough in some way. Sometimes it's genuine, sometimes you genuinely just really don't want to do it. But if you're finding yourself resisting something, then the first thing really is just get a bit curious and just say, oh, why am I so resistant to that? So, and then dive into it a little bit more. So I do that usually through journaling. I bang on about journaling a lot with my clients because it is such a helpful and beneficial way of surfacing things. So I always start with journaling. I will just free write anything that's coming into my head around the thing and question myself and, just get curious. I wonder where that's come from. What's it trying to tell me? And what else, and what else, and what else, and just keep going really until you dry up. Then when you've got that kind of really good understanding about what that limiting belief is, and sometimes you have to keep going because it's not always what it first seems, then start asking yourself things like, well, is it really 100% true? Is it always the case? Then start thinking about examples of when it might not be the case. So, examples from the past or examples you can see. So, for example, in midlife, sometimes we can hit that point of thinking, oh, I'm just too old now. So, start looking for examples of where other people have, changed career or started a new hobby or, written that book. A lot of famous writers don't get going until they're well into their retirement. So, there are loads of things that you can do as you get older, and age really isn't a limitation, but we often tell ourselves it is. So if you're feeling that, look for examples of where that is not true, not just from your own life, but from, famous people. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, once you've done that, is to start saying, once you've got that sort of starting to think, oh, maybe it's not always 100% true, is to also tackle it like from the other prong, which is how could I think about this differently? And one of the best ways I've found to do that, and to start taking a more kind and compassionate approach to yourself around whatever it is to ask yourself, how would I speak to my 5-year-old self about this thing? Or how would I speak to a friend? And generally, what would be a more helpful way for me to think about this? So those are the 3 ways in which I try and shift a limiting belief. Now, obviously, some are really deep-seated. Sometimes you have to go really, really, really dig. And I've certainly found it helpful to have a coach to help me with some of mine. It took me a long time to accept that though. Another limiting belief, I don't need one. Anyway, so I hope if you've got a limiting belief, try that those 3 things and see if it helps you just understand it a little bit better, and shift it, reframe it. Let me know how you get on.